I'm a player, 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 I'm a player. If you see me looking clean cut, matching from head to toe, dipping with a mean strut, throwing and blowing green stuff, hella creamed up with the bling cuff. Ain't no wicked, we can kick it if you blew up.
Hello and welcome once again to another episode of Ghettofabulous Kings of War. Today, we're going to do something different. We're going to do a review of the Nightstalker army, kind of based off my experience of the last, several months, maybe 6 months, maybe a little longer. So, overall, just going to look at the army as a whole, not each unit by the numbers. You can pick up a copy, look on Easy Builder, whatever. If you want that. This is just overall impressions. Kind of give the potential Nightstalker player an idea of, if they're going to look at Nightstalker as an army, what they're getting into. And at the end, I'll talk a little bit about my future plans for the army, my bat reps, etc., etc. So, strengths. First of all, it's just a fun army to build. If you like modeling, if you like to have creativity and have freedom to put some stuff out on the table is unique, this army has a lot of that because they're nightmare creatures. So nightmares can be lots of different things. It's good in the sense that it's not a usual army. You see very few Nightstalker armies. And first of all, it's just good to have a different army in your group. It's not. It gets kind of boring. Everyone's playing the same stuff over and over again. So it's nice to have a different army, and it's great that if you, at least for me, I always like being the person with a different army. So that's great. And if you take Nightstalkers to tournaments or other events, because they're unusual, a lot of people don't know how to handle them. They're not as familiar with them. So it gives you a slight edge. It's kind of like being left-handed, I guess, in some other sport. This one is a little less helpful now, but because the army-wide special rule is stealthy, shooting heavy armies can have problems with it, because obviously now they're all hitting on -1, so that's a good thing to have. The planar apparition, just a specific unit in there, but I think pound for pound it's one of the best healing support units in the game. It's got heal 7, it's got regeneration 4, it's got ensnare. It's nimble, speed 7. I think it's like 165 points. So you get a lot of stuff for that, and stealthy, obviously. So it's survivable. It has a great heal. It can hold things up with ensnare. It can just do a lot of things. It can grab objectives because it's almost like a character, but because it's a monster, it can grab objectives. And heal 7 nimble. It can grab objectives very quickly at the end of the game. And it's got a lot of units that are unique and have unique abilities, especially like the doppelgangers. That unit mimics whatever it attacks. It has the option of assuming the target unit's attack characteristics, crushing strength, and to hit modifier. So no other unit really has an ability like that. You've got things like the Terror, a giant squid nightmare creature that's got entangle, a lot of attacks, surge. So a lot of unique elements out there for you to pick around with. There are some weaknesses, however. First of all, overall, I think that the army special rule, stealthy, is not worth the price you pay for it. I think you look at a lot of the units in the army, they're kind of similar to maybe a unit in another army, but either they get costed higher because of stealthy, or maybe more likely, the other army's unit would have defense 5. The Nightstalker army has defense 4 but stealthy. And ultimately, a lot of armies have very little or no shooting at all. So suddenly, this special rule you're just being costed into your points value is not effective. If you look at the army list as a whole, there are not very many 5 defense units and no 6-up defense units. In fact, most of the army is in the 4 or 3 range. And that's really a problem in a way, because that means that pretty much everything the enemy has is going to be effective. If you've got some 6-up defensive units, you can throw them into a unit with no crushing strength and really hold them up for a while. If you've got an army that spams a lot of 3-up defense, maybe, you could attack something with few attacks but high crushing strength and kind of spam them, and tie them up, tar pit them for a while because they're paying a lot of points for quality attacks, and you've got a lot of nerve and low quality stuff for them to hit. But because Nightstalkers are in the middle, mostly around 4s with some 3s in there too, everything is pretty effective against them. So you have a hard time getting good matchups for you and making your opponent less effective with his attacks. As individuals go, the army doesn't have a lot of variety with individuals, and the 2 spellcasting individuals it has, compared to other comparable units in other armies, they're very expensive or not as effective. So, for example, their creature, I believe it's called the Horror. It's a spellcaster with Surge 6. For the same price in the Undead army, you're getting like Surge 8 or Surge 9. Just a little better, but those things kind of add up over time, those inefficiencies. And okay, part of it might be the fact that you're getting stealthy on it. So it's a hard unit to shoot because it's individual and stealthy. It's speed 7 instead of speed 5 on a Necromancer. But ultimately, those little buffs here and there aren't worth the additional points, which you'd rather invest elsewhere. The Nightstalker army in general has very limited shooting. I've got a couple units with Firebolt, one of which is piercing 3, hitting on a 4-up. So a pretty powerful attack, but at short range. And Lightning, a monster that can cast Lightning 5, which is okay, but comparing it to spellcasters that can do Lightning 5 is a little more expensive. But in general, Firebolt and Lightning, not a lot of range, not a lot of damage, pretty mediocre overall, and not having that ranged capability puts less pressure on your opponent to come at you, gives them more time to set up and set up beneficial charges and angles and take their time. And if they have shooting, it forces you, even though it may be less effective shooting because of stealthy, they're still going to outshoot you. So you still have to end up being the one who presses the issue and forces the action. The final point there is movement tempo. There's some fast units in the army and some slow units in the army, and that's, typical. Most units, even humans, you have your knights, your cavalry, and then your infantry. But it's a bigger issue in my mind with this army. If you don't have shooting, it's all melee or mostly melee. You need to work in concert. There's not a lot of heavy-hitting flying units to get around flanks to set up charges. So you have to work in concert on melee, and if you've got a couple heavy-hitting slow units and a couple moderate-hitting fast units, it's going to take several turns to get the slow units to catch up with the fast units to attack. And again, if you don't have a lot of shooting, even if the enemy's shooting is less effective, it takes time to have all your elements move up and attack together, and that's just more time for your opponent to shoot you. So, my overall impression so far of the army has been that it's a good army. It's not a great top tier powerhouse army, which is fine. No one wants the army that loses all the time. And maybe a hardcore power gamer is not going to look at this army, but you can still be successful with it and have a lot of fun. But like it says there at the top, ultimately, if your opponent is familiar with the army, knows what the capabilities of the Nightstalkers are, and understands their units, and has a balanced army with all the different capabilities, some mobility, some shooting, some magic, some melee, they're going to have an edge over you. Basically, because the army, again, has mostly defense 4, and the units are paying for stealthy, which if you're up against another army that has little to no shooting in it, you're losing efficiency. It makes it so you can't trade blows with another army, in a straight up melee fight. And there are some armies like Varangur that are just, or orcs maybe, they're going to be like that. They're just going to trade hits with you. And ultimately, they have abilities that you don't, you're paying for, and it's going to give them the edge. I was in the 2016 Bug Eater, and I got second place in the tournament. It's a fairly large tournament. I think I lost one battle, and that was against a Brotherhood army. It had a little bit of shooting, but it had lots of mobility, and he could take his time. He could move around, maneuver, set up the beneficial charges, and either I sat there and got plinked away over time, or I moved forward to engage. And of course, it's objectives or something, so I have to move forward. And if I'm moving forward, he has range on charges, and he can set up the advantageous stuff or work flanks around to annihilate units more effectively. And if you look at some of my previous battle reports, I have one against the Brotherhood, and he did the exact same thing. Just pick away with his artillery and his archers, setting up charges with his faster cavalry, and it's strong and powerful enough to destroy units quickly, and I just can't trade. So I'm at a disadvantage, and there's not a lot within the army I can do. I have success in the tournaments, and initially in my local club, again, because it's a good army, and when your opponents aren't used to it, but I've found as my opponents improve their army, partially based off experience against the Nightstalkers when I was playing them, their army got better against everybody, but when it started getting better against everybody by adding a couple breath weapons, adding a little bit of artillery, adding some more mobility, it made them more successful against other players, but it really shut my army down, and I didn't have tools to add to my army list to counter that. So it wasn't like they were specifically tailoring their army to defeat mine. They were learning lessons and tweaking their army to make it better, and eventually, as it becomes a more efficient combined arms force, it can shut down the Nightstalkers, at least in my experience. The new Clash of Kings rule set, I think, overall hurts the Nightstalkers pretty significantly. First of all, if you've seen my battle reports, I had already identified the Fiends as an excellent unit. I didn't think they were overpowered. I just thought they were a very good unit. Kind of a medium cav. They're speed 8, so pretty fast. 24 attacks, hitting on 4s, crushing 1, and vicious. So not incredibly powerful hitting, but pretty powerful. Defense 4, so again, in the middle. But the big thing was their nerve, 1720, I think maybe 1316 for the regiment. So, and 200 points for a horde, I think maybe 130 for a regiment. So, yeah, very efficient. And I think they got pinged maybe 2 or 3 points of nerve. The Mind Screech is a large monster. I think it has 12 shots of Firebolt, hitting on 4s with piercing 3. And most armies I see, and I think I'll talk about this a little bit, most armies for Nightstalkers I've seen have focused more on the Mind Screeches. I've never been that impressed with them. In general, I found shooting to be hit or miss with armies, and the Mind Screech in general is just very expensive. They're high quality shots. There's a lot of targets that aren't very good for them to shoot. They're usually behind a unit of some sort, so they don't get charged. So even though they hit on 4s normally, now you've got cover you're providing to a lot of opponents. So now you're hitting on a 5+. And so many of the missions in the book are built around objectives. So now you got to move. So that's another negative to hit. Or you can sit still. But if you're sitting still, you've only got an 18-inch range. I never liked the unit. But a lot of armies are built on it, and the Mind Screech got a nerve hit as well. Overall, the Clash of Kings rules, I think, will end up encouraging less shooting. They're trying to weaken it. So, there's a Bane Chant adjustment now. You have to get 2 successes on a Bane Chant to make a ranged attack, get piercing 1. More scenarios have objectives and things you have to move to, or loot tokens that you have to capture in melee. If you shoot a unit, they just drop it, and you don't get the bounty or whatever. So if there's less shooting, then the army special rule that helps counter shooting is even less effective, but you're still paying full price for it. So again, now you're getting into more melee-centric battles. And like I said earlier, it's hard to trade blows with this army because it's just it's built around stealth and defense 4. It's good at melee, but it's not great, and that's where the battles are starting to go to, I think. The one benefit I found is if I came across armies that were very heavy on magic or breath weapons, the Nightstalkers got pwned, basically. Again, most of the stuff's defense 4 or 3, and stealth doesn't protect you against magic or breath weapons. So when you faced an army with a lot of it, you just got nuked. So now that there's cover, granted, that helps a little bit, but not really enough to make up for the overall hits that the army takes with the new Clash of King rules. And one of the army units, the Screamer, its longest ranged option with, and there's another individual with Lightning 5, I think, as well. Now, if they're going to hide behind units and shoot, the enemy gets cover as well. So it's actually hindering some of the ranged options for the Nightstalkers as well, which is unfortunate. Now, like I said, part of many armies I've seen have focused on the Mind Screeches, and I think you're going to see even less of that because with the objective focus, the reduction in shooting, it's just not the way forward, at least in my opinion. Overall, I was doing pretty well at the strategic level with my army. I would out-deploy my opponent. I would try to refuse a flank and overwhelm a flank and stall in the center so I could roll up a flank. But tactically, some of my generalship was lacking, and I was using the army not so much to flank attacks, but frontal assault, combo charge kind of things, which worked sometimes, but was not reliable enough. And if I got stalled up for a turn, that was usually all it took for the enemy to overwhelm the center, and then I would lose. So there is a bit of generalship involved that I'm still trying to develop. And like it says below there, I usually in my armies across all sorts of different games, I don't like the really expensive mega units. Either the efficient general purpose stuff like the Fiends, not excellent at anything, but a solid all-around unit for a fair price. Or specialists, whether they're expensive like the Planar Apparition. Well, expensive to me, again, 165 points. To me, it's like that's a lot. Ooh, I don't know if I want to go much higher than that. Or a Hydra. I like the Hydra unit from Forces of Nature or from the Twilight Kin. He's relatively cheap in a way. I think it's like 140 points. But for a 15-17 monster with regeneration, he has a pretty specific role. Tie stuff up. Maybe he can contribute a few crushing to, medium quality attacks on something to put a few wounds on something. He's not spectacular, but he's very efficient for his point cost at just being a roadblock, a tar pit, holding stuff up, letting the rest of my army function on some other task, or holding an objective, holding a token. He's kind of, his job is to stay alive. And for his point cost, he does it pretty well. So I've been looking, we're starting a new escalation league in my area. I was like, well, I've got Nightstalkers, they're fine, but this is an opportunity to start something new. So what would fit my kind of general attitude? I want to change some stuff. I want to focus more on my tactical level failings. I need an army that makes me focus more on success at a tactical level. But I don't want to change too much. I'm not going to go crazy with like the all-flying elf army or something where I'm really setting up patience and maneuvering to set up third or fourth turn rear charges. And I don't want to go that crazy. So what I figured I'd go for was Goblins, which in some ways seems a little strange. But unlike Warhammer Fantasy, some other armies that really rewarded overwhelming your opponent with a specific type of unit, or in Warhammer Fantasy I played a lot of Dark Elves. I focused a lot on light cav and maneuver and getting around and avoiding my opponents and just whittling them down. In 40k, I might play a lot of mechanized stuff, trying to shut down enemies' small arms fire, using mobility and armor. Kings of War, I have found, has not really been so rewarding to lopsided one-dimensional armies, which is good. It's to its benefit. Balanced armies that have many tools to deal with many threats seem to work much better. And Goblins, unlike Nightstalkers, have a lot of options to deal with things. They've got breath weapons, they've got artillery, they've got some cavalry, they've got magic, they've got pretty much everything but flyers. So that lends itself to building a combined arms force, which is nice. However, nothing in the Goblin army is really powerful and overwhelming, which is good. I don't like the big Death Star units, but they're not even moderate. Most of the stuff's pretty mediocre, so it's going to force me to really work on setting up flank charges, rear charges, stalling units, planning ahead, sacrificing one unit to get multiple charges with something else. So that's really where I think I've been lacking, and this army is going to force me to work on that and give me, thankfully, the tools to do it. But I have to learn to use it efficiently. Obviously, a Goblin army is going to give me plenty of cheap units over elite ones. I thought about Ratkin as well, but ultimately Goblins will give me, like it says in the bottom there, some more modeling opportunities. I've never been a greenskin player, but I think most most veteran war gamers have had a greenskin army of some sort at one point or another. So I guess I should join the club. I've been doing wargaming for a while now, and building it from scratch. This is an opportunity. I've been trying to up my modeling ability, get more involved in the hobby as a whole. So I've got kind of an idea of a steampunky thing. So now, instead of the mob beasts just being animals, I've got some. I just bought today a mold where I can make some little robots. So I can be little steampunky robots. I've got some goblins here with wrenches and things from War Machine, actually. So they'll be the handlers. If I've got an idea of possibly building chariots, which unfortunately many armies have chariots. I've never seen them really used effectively in battle reports, and they look like crap statistically. But as a modeling idea, building some scratch-built wagons with little steam engines on them, and then some little archers and bowmen on them, seems really fun. It would be a great modeling thing, but I may make a regiment or a horde and try them out. So I'm kind of excited about that, except for the fact that no one uses them, and there's usually a good reason if you don't see them very much. They're probably pretty bad. But we'll give them a shot at least. It'll be fun to at least try them out a couple times. And since they're not in my area, and at the tournaments I have not seen many, Bug Eater I think had one Goblin army. So it's still a little unusual, a little rare, which is fun. It's fun as a player to be the oddball and provide a new opportunity for people, something different. And it gives you, again, the left-hand advantage where your opponents are not as familiar with the army, and that can give you some opportunities. So that's where we're going. Tournament starts, the Escalation League will start next week. So we'll do a couple battle reports. I think we're starting at 500 points. So small battles, quick battles, but should be educational. We'll learn a lot. We'll put together some tactical analysis, and hopefully everyone will learn from it. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments below, and hopefully we'll get some more information and some more content out for everybody. Thanks.